My wife lied to my face for months, then admitted she had feelings for her boss. When I found out the truth, I knew our marriage was over. When I married my wife, I thought we were starting the next chapter of our lives. 7 years together, and we tied the knot on our anniversary 2 months ago. Things weren't perfect, but I thought we were solid. She worked at a restaurant she joined about 6 months back. Her shifts would end around 11 p.m., but she'd usually go out for drinks with coworkers and come home between 3 and 6 a.m. At first I didn't mind. I liked that she had her own social life, and I'd use the time to play poker or unwind. But over time, something didn't feel right. I couldn't shake the sense that she wasn't being honest with me. It started small. Little inconsistencies about where she'd been or who she was with. I started asking her casually where she was going and kept notes in my phone, not even sure what I was looking for. Weeks passed, and my gut feeling only grew stronger. One night, I decided to cross-check her stories with her Google Maps timeline. It felt invasive, but I couldn't ignore the pit in my stomach. What I found hit me like a freight train. She hadn't been going to the places she said. Instead, almost every time, her location showed her at the same house, her manager's house. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe there was a group of them hanging out. But the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Why lie if there was nothing to hide? I confronted her. I laid it all out calmly at first, saying I'd noticed discrepancies and asking if she was being truthful. She denied everything, swore up and down that I was mistaken. I gave her one last chance. This is your opportunity to tell me the truth. She stared at me, unflinching, and lied again. That's when I pulled out the evidence. Dates, times, the address. She froze. Her story shifted. She wasn't cheating, she insisted. But she'd been lying because she was smoking weed at her manager's place and didn't want me to know. She knew I'd call her a hypocrite since she'd always criticized me for smoking too much. I told her I didn't buy it. The lying was too elaborate, too consistent. That's when she broke. Through tears, she admitted she'd started developing feelings for her manager. She swore it hadn't gone beyond that, just feelings, nothing physical. But she felt guilty and didn't know how to handle it. I felt the floor drop out from under me. 7 years together, 2 months of marriage, and this is what it came to. I packed a bag, told her we were done, and walked out. I blocked her number and cut off contact except for a few necessary emails. 2 weeks passed. I tried to process everything, tried to make sense of how someone I loved so much could lie so easily. She reached out, begging to talk, saying she wanted to explain. Last night, I finally agreed to meet her. She cried, apologized, and swore she wasn't cheating. She pointed out that her manager lives with his partner and another co-worker, making it logistically impossible for anything to have happened. She begged me to believe her, and maybe I do. Maybe she didn't physically cheat, but she emotionally cheated, and she lied, repeatedly. I didn't know she was capable of lying to me like that. Now I'm torn. Part of me wants to forgive her, to chalk this up to a mistake she can learn from. I've been inattentive, too caught up in my own world, and I know that pushed her away. But another part of me knows I'll never trust her again. The lies will always be there, lingering in the back of my mind. I'm not sure why I'm writing this. Maybe I need advice. Maybe I just needed to let it out. I've tried to leave her before, but every time her tears and heartbreak pulled me back. I couldn't bear to hurt her. But now, I don't know if I can bear to stay. Am I taking the easy way out by considering forgiveness? Or am I just avoiding the hard truth that this marriage might already be over? Update 1. So, after my original post, I agreed to meet my wife to talk. I didn't want to, honestly. I was ready to file for divorce and move on, but her emails wore me down. She said she just wanted a chance to explain herself face to face, no begging or drama. I told myself I'd go for closure, but deep down, I think I was hoping she'd say something that would magically fix everything. Spoiler. That didn't happen. We met at a coffee shop, neutral ground, because I didn't want her crying all over the apartment and making it even harder for me to think straight. The second I saw her, I could tell she'd been a mess. Her eyes were puffy, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. She started talking before we even sat down, apologizing and saying she knew she messed up. But I told her to save it for when we had coffee in front of us. I needed at least one buffer between me and what I knew was going to be an emotional train wreck. Once we sat down, she started with the same story as before. She wasn't cheating. She just felt guilty because of her feelings for her manager, and she didn't know how to tell me. She admitted she handled it terribly and swore she never thought of doing anything physical with him. It wasn't even like that, she kept saying, like that was supposed to make it better. She said it was just a crush, something she didn't take seriously and thought would pass. I asked her if she told him about her feelings, and she swore she hadn't. I didn't believe her, not because I think she's some evil mastermind, but because after everything, how could I? She lied so easily and for so long. The trust was shattered, and without that, everything she said felt like damage control instead of honesty. I told her that, and her response was to cry and beg me to believe her, saying she didn't want to lose me. It wasn't the first time I'd seen her cry, but this time felt different. She wasn't just upset, she looked terrified, desperate even. I asked her why she didn't just tell me she was hanging out at her manager's house if nothing shady was going on. She said she panicked because she knew I wouldn't be okay with it, especially after she started realizing she had feelings for him. She admitted that hiding it and lying were horrible decisions, but she claimed she was trying to protect me from being hurt. She said it wasn't fair to me, and she felt like a terrible person for letting it get this far. Here's the kicker. She tried to flip it on me. Not in a malicious way, but in a we both messed up kind of way. She said I'd been emotionally distant for a long time and that she felt like I didn't care about her anymore. She said she started spending more time with her coworkers because she felt lonely and unimportant at home. According to her, the whole thing started as her trying to fill a void I wasn't filling, and it spiraled from there. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say I was the perfect husband. I know I wasn't. I've been wrapped up in my own hobbies, my job, and just life. I didn't pay as much attention to her as I should have, and I definitely didn't make her feel like she was my priority all the time. But does that justify lying and emotional cheating? I don't think so. She tried to say she felt like I didn't care if she went out or stayed home, but that's not true. I cared. I just didn't realize how much I was screwing up by not showing it better. We went back and forth like this for what felt like hours. She'd cry, apologize, and say she wanted to make things right. I'd ask more questions, poke holes in her story, and point out all the ways she betrayed my trust. She kept saying she wanted to go to therapy together, that we could fix this if we both tried. At one point, she even said she'd quit her job if that's what it took to prove she was serious about fixing things. Here's the thing. I didn't feel relief or hope hearing any of that. I felt tired, exhausted, honestly. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. I wanted to believe we could fix this. But the thought of trying felt overwhelming. I told her that, and she said she understood. But she didn't look like she did. She looked like she thought she could convince me if she just said the right thing. When we finally left the coffee shop, I told her I needed more time to think. I couldn't give her an answer about whether I wanted to stay married or get divorced. She cried some more and begged me not to shut her out completely. I said I'd email her if I wanted to talk again. She tried to hug me, but I stepped back. It was awkward, and she looked crushed, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Now I'm back to square one, only more confused than ever. I keep replaying the conversation in my head, wondering if I'm making the right decision either way. If I stay, I'll always wonder if she's lying to me again. If I leave, I'll always wonder if I gave up on something that could have been fixed. Some of you might think I'm weak for even considering staying, and maybe you're right. But it's hard to walk away from someone you've spent 7 years with, someone you thought you'd spend the rest of your life with. It's even harder when you see how much pain they're in, even if they caused it themselves. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to give her another chance, to go to therapy and see if we can rebuild what we had. But another part of me wonders if the trust is too broken to ever fix. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. I've got a consultation with a divorce lawyer next week, not because I'm ready to pull the trigger, but because I want to know what my options are. Maybe that makes me a terrible person, keeping one foot out the door while she's begging me to stay. But I can't make a decision until I feel like I've thought through every angle. If anyone has been through something like this, I'd love to hear how you handled it. Did you stay and work through it, or did you cut your losses and move on? Right now, I feel like either choice will break me. Update 2. I decided to move forward with the divorce process, but it's been anything but smooth. After my last update, I consulted a lawyer and started thinking seriously about what separation would mean. Financially, emotionally, logistically, it's a mess. I've been trying to stay focused on the bigger picture, but every step feels like tearing off a fresh scab. The consultation was straightforward. My lawyer laid everything out for me: how to divide assets, what to do about the lease on our apartment, and the steps to legally separate before finalizing a divorce. It was sobering, hearing my life as a series of legal points. I went in expecting to feel empowered, like taking control of the situation would give me clarity, but instead, I left feeling drained. The hardest part has been dealing with her emails. She's still trying to convince me to come back, but it's not just apologies anymore. It's bargaining. She's offering to quit her job, go to therapy alone, sign post-nups, anything to prove she's serious about making things work. One email was basically a step-by-step plan for how she'd rebuild my trust. She even said she'd give me full access to her phone, location, everything. It's hard to explain how that made me feel. On one hand, it was like she was putting herself in a metaphorical prison to prove her loyalty, which just feels wrong. On the other hand, I could see she's genuinely terrified of losing me. I haven't responded to most of her messages. I told her I needed space, but she's not respecting that, and it's frustrating. Every time I see her name pop up in my inbox, I get this mix of anger, sadness, and guilt. She says she understands why I'm hurt, but insists I'm throwing away something we could fix. She keeps bringing up our history, our wedding, and all the plans we made for the future. "Don't let this mistake erase everything we've built," she wrote in one email. That line has been stuck in my head for days. I finally decided to meet with her one more time to set boundaries and make it clear where I stand. We met at the apartment since I needed to grab a few more things anyway. As soon as I walked in, I regretted it. She had photos of us everywhere, ones I didn't even remember taking. There was one from our honeymoon, a candid shot of me laughing while she made some silly face. It felt manipulative, even though she probably just thought it'd remind me of the good times. She tried to hug me the second I walked in, and I had to physically step back and hold up a hand to stop her. "I'm not here for that," I said, maybe a little too sharply. She looked like I'd slapped her, but I couldn't let myself get sucked in again. I told her I wanted to talk about next steps, how we'd handle dividing everything, and what our timeline would look like. She listened, but the whole time, she had this look like she was waiting for her turn to make her case. And sure enough, as soon as I finished talking, she launched into another round of pleading. This time, it wasn't just about her regrets or promises. It was about me. She said I was giving up on us because I was scared to put in the work, that I was so focused on her mistakes I couldn't see my own. She said we both let the relationship fall apart, and walking away now was the cowardly choice. That hit a nerve. I know I've made mistakes. I know I've been inattentive, distant, and probably taken her for granted more times than I can count. But her trying to make this about both of us felt like deflection. I told her as much, and she just shook her head like I was missing the point. "I'm not saying what I did was okay," she said, "but you're acting like it's all black and white, like you've been perfect and I'm the villain. It's not that simple." I wanted to scream. It's not about being perfect. It's about trust. I told her that over and over, but she kept coming back to how relationships are complicated and how one mistake shouldn't define everything. "It wasn't just one mistake," I finally said. "It was weeks of lying. It was making me feel like I was crazy for suspecting something. It was hiding things and only telling the truth when you got caught. That's not one mistake." She started crying again, which I knew was coming, but it didn't make it any easier to deal with. She said she hated herself for what she did and couldn't imagine her life without me. She said she's willing to spend the rest of her life making it up to me, but I have to give her the chance. "You're my best friend," she said, sobbing. "You're the love of my life. Please don't throw us away." Hearing that broke me a little. I wanted to believe her, to believe that she's as devastated as she seems. But there's a part of me that just can't. I told her I needed to go and that I'd contact her when I was ready to talk again. She begged me to stay, saying we could figure it out together, but I walked out. Back at my friend's place, I sat in my car for what felt like hours, replaying everything in my head. Am I being too harsh? Am I throwing away something that could be fixed? Or am I just falling for her tears again because I don't want to be the bad guy? Here's where I'm at now. I haven't filed for divorce yet, but I haven't changed my mind about it either. I'm trying to focus on practical things, like finding a new place to live and getting my name off the lease, but emotionally I feel stuck. Every time I start to feel certain about leaving, her words creep back in. What if I'm making the wrong choice? What if I regret this for the rest of my life? I've been reading your comments and messages and they've been helpful, even when they're brutally honest. Some of you think I should run and never look back, while others think I owe it to her and myself to try. The truth is, I don't know what I owe anyone right now. I just know I can't keep living in this limbo. For now, I'm taking it day by day. I've told her to stop emailing me unless it's about logistics, and I'm trying to stick to that boundary. Whether we work this out or end it for good, I need space to figure out what I really want. I'll update again when there's more to say, but right now, I'm just trying to survive the day-to-day chaos. Update 3. The divorce is finalized. I'm sitting in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes I don't have the energy to unpack, and it finally feels like I can breathe. It's not relief exactly, but it's something close. Like my brain has stopped screaming at me to fix things that can't be fixed. The weeks leading up to this were chaos. After my last update, she ramped up her efforts to win me back. She sent long emails, voicemails, even a handwritten letter delivered to my friend's place. It was always the same. Promises, apologies, and pleas to not throw away what we had. A part of me wanted to believe her, to just hit pause on everything and try to rebuild. But every time I thought about what it would take to trust her again, it felt impossible. I stopped responding to anything that wasn't strictly logistical. We had to figure out what to do with our apartment lease, split our savings, and decide who got what. It was surprisingly civil, considering everything. She agreed to keep the apartment since it was closer to her work, and I didn't want to stay there anyway. Too many memories. She also insisted I take more of the money from our savings, saying she felt guilty about everything and wanted to make it right. I didn't argue. I figured I'd need the cushion while I figured out my next steps. When the day came to sign the divorce papers, I thought I'd feel something bigger. Closure, sadness, maybe even regret. Instead, it was just quiet. We met at the lawyer's office, signed what we needed to, and barely spoke. She tried to say something as I was leaving, but I couldn't stay. I think I mumbled something like, "Take care," and then I was gone. The first few days after that were rough. I thought I'd feel freer, like I'd shed this heavy weight, but instead I felt hollow. I'd been so focused on getting through the breakup that I hadn't really thought about what came next. Without the constant back and forth with her, my mind started wandering to all the what-ifs. What if I'd been more attentive? What if I'd confronted her sooner? What if I'd given her a real chance to make things right? I finally broke and called my mom, which isn't something I do often. She's not exactly the warm and fuzzy type, but she surprised me. She said, "You can drive yourself crazy trying to rewrite the past, but at the end of the day, you can only move forward. If you're happier without her, you made the right choice. If you're not, you'll figure it out." Simple, but it stuck with me. Since then, I've been trying to focus on rebuilding. I found a new place, closer to some friends I'd drifted away from during the marriage. I started going out more, nothing wild, just poker nights, the occasional bar hang, things I used to enjoy before everything got so heavy. It's been nice, reconnecting with people and realizing I still have a life outside of her. I even started therapy, which is something I never thought I'd do. The first few sessions were awkward. I don't love talking about myself, especially to a stranger, but it's been helpful. My therapist pointed out that a lot of my indecision and guilt came from trying to avoid being the bad guy. She said I was so focused on her feelings that I didn't give myself the space to feel my own. That hit hard. I've been carrying around this fear of being selfish, like prioritizing my own needs makes me a terrible person. But maybe it's not selfish to want a relationship where I don't have to question everything. As for her, I haven't heard much since the papers were signed. She sent one last email, a sort of goodbye where she thanked me for the time we had together and said she hoped I'd find happiness. It was surprisingly mature, and honestly, it gave me some closure I didn't know I needed. I didn't respond. There wasn't anything left to say, but I appreciated it. Looking back, I don't regret how things played out. Yes, there were moments I could have handled better. And yes, I still have days where I wonder if I made the right choice. But when I think about staying, about trying to rebuild something that was so fundamentally broken, I know it would have eaten me alive. I would have spent every day wondering if she was lying again, if her feelings for me were real, if I could ever let my guard down. That's no way to live. The biggest thing I've learned is that love isn't enough on its own. Trust, respect, honesty, those things matter just as much, if not more. Without them, love starts to feel like a weight, something you're dragging around because you're too afraid to let go. That's what our marriage became, and walking away was the only way to save myself. For anyone who's been following this and wondering how I'm doing now, I'm okay. Not great, not terrible, just okay. Some days are harder than others, but overall, I feel like I'm moving in the right direction. I don't know what the future holds, and that's scary, but it's also kind of exciting. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I have choices. To those of you who gave me advice, shared your own stories, or just told me to trust my gut, thank you. You reminded me that I'm not alone, even when it felt like the walls were closing in. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that people are resilient. We get hurt, we heal, and we keep going. So that's it. The chapter is closed, and I'm ready to start the next one. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I'm not as afraid of the blank page as I used to be. Life goes on, and so will I.